Asher, we need to talk. Now. I stumbled in the doorway, the sharpness in his voice catching me off guard. What's wrong? Did something happen at work? He didn't look up, fingers fidgeting with his phone. No, it's about us, about you. The tension grew thick in the living room of our suburban Chicago home. Asher and I had been married for 5 years, a seemingly perfect match after meeting at a corporate event. I walked over and sat next to him, trying to decipher the meaning in his words. About me? I echoed, confused. Asher finally looked at me, his eyes steely. It's about kids, Harper. My parents, my mom especially. She keeps asking when we're going to have a child. My heart pounded. We'd talked about children in the abstract, but nothing concrete. I know it's a sensitive topic, but we've only been trying for a year. He sighed heavily. Mom says we should get fertility tests. She's worried it might be, well, you. I recoiled as if slapped. Me? You think I'm the problem? It's not about blame, he lied, poorly concealing his own doubts. We just need to know. For us. An awkward silence settled between us. My eyes stung with unshed tears. So what, you think I should get tested? Asher nodded, still not meeting my gaze. It's for the best, Harper, just to be sure. I rose from the couch, feeling a mix of anger and vulnerability. All right, I'll do it, but you have to get tested too. For the first time, he looked uneasy. Why me? It's usually on the woman. Because it's a partnership, I said firmly. Both of us should know. He grumbled something under his breath, but didn't protest further. That night, our dinner was eaten in silence, the clinking of cutlery the only sound. Evelyn's disapproving voice echoed in my mind, always demanding, always critical. I couldn't shake off the memory of her last visit. Harper, it's been 5 years, she had said over tea, her perfectly manicured fingers tapping the table. Asher needs to be a father. It's his dream. Evelyn was relentless, her sharp words cutting deep. I had smiled politely, choking on the bitterness I couldn't express. After dinner, Asher retreated to his office, leaving me alone with my thoughts. Our once seamless bond now felt like a frayed rope, barely holding on. Days turned into a blur. Appointments were made, tests were taken. The waiting was torture, with every passing hour intensifying my anxiety. Then the results came. I was fine. Relief flooded, but was short-lived. What about you, Asher? I asked, hopeful for a shared sense of relief. He shrugged dismissively. I'm sure I'm fine. It's usually on the woman, Harper. His refusal spoke volumes. I realized then how deep his doubts ran, seeded and watered by his mother's cruelty. I began to observe him more closely, his indifference, his growing distance. Each day felt lonelier. The home we built turned cold. With Evelyn's voice haunting from afar and Asher's silence deafening, our shared life dissolved into an unsolved mystery. Maybe you should see a specialist. Just to be sure, Asher suggested nonchalantly one morning over breakfast. I've already scheduled a test. What about you? I asked, finding it hard to keep the irritation out of my voice. Why me? It's usually on the woman, he repeated, taking a sip of his coffee. My heart sank at his dismissive tone. I decided to focus on the task at hand, hoping that clear results would force a change in his attitude. A few weeks later, my test results came back. The results show no issues on my end, I told Asher, holding the paper out to him. He barely glanced at it. Okay, he muttered, turning back to his work, as if the matter was of little consequence now. Asher, you promised you'd get tested too, I reminded him, trying to rein in my frustration. So he waved me off. I'm sure it's fine, Harper. Let's drop it. Days turned into weeks, and Evelyn's verbal assaults grew sharper, digging deeper. One evening, at dinner with Asher and his parents, she couldn't contain her disdain. You are the reason my son can't fulfill his dream of being a father, Evelyn hissed, her voice dripping with venom as she poked her salad. It's not my fault, I snapped, taken aback by the acidity in her words. Asher could be the one with issues, but he won't listen. Asher remained silent, his eyes fixed on his plate. His passivity felt like a betrayal, deepening the chasm between us. In the car ride home, I broke the silence. Why didn't you defend me, Asher? Your mother blames me for everything. It's not that simple, he sighed. She's worried about us. No, I retorted. She's worried about you, not us. I'm getting tired of this, Asher. Asher's indifference hurt more with each passing day. I found myself increasingly isolated, documenting these painful interactions secretly. Through audio recordings, I captured the coldness in Asher's voice and the cruelty in Evelyn's words. I needed evidence, not just for myself but for any future decisions. One evening, needing clarity, I broached the topic of counseling. Asher, I think we need to see a therapist. He laughed, a sound void of humor. Therapist? You think we're that bad off? I do, I insisted. We need help, Asher. Nah, he shook his head. We're just going through a rough patch. Frustration boiled over, but I stayed calm. This isn't just a rough patch, Asher. We're falling apart. The arguments grew bitter, our once warm home filled with cold silence or angry shouts. Evelyn's relentless bullying cast a constant shadow, and Asher's indifference made it clear he had sided with his mother. My heart breaking a little more each day, I began considering legal separation. I wasn't ready to give up entirely, but I needed to protect myself. The evidence I gathered, emails, recordings, even witness statements from friends, gave me a sliver of control. Yet, despite my anger and hurt, I still held on to hope, a hope that something or someone might turn things around before it was too late. You are the reason my son can't fulfill his dream of being a father. Evelyn's words reverberated in my mind as I sat across from her during another strained family dinner. Evelyn, it's not my fault. Asher could be the one with issues, but he won't listen, I countered, my voice cracking. She narrowed her eyes. Don't you dare shift the blame. My son is perfectly fine. This is on you. Asher sat next to me, chewing his food slowly, looking anywhere but at us. Asher, I begged, please tell her. He sighed, putting his fork down. Mom, enough. Let's not do this now. Evelyn shot me a triumphant look, as if she had won another battle in her twisted campaign against me. I pushed my plate away, appetite lost. Later at home, I tried to talk to Asher about counseling again. We need help, Asher. We can't keep going like this. I don't need a therapist to tell me what's wrong, he muttered, and I don't need one to make excuses for you. Excuses? I was incredulous. You think everything's my fault? The tests were fine, remember? He said coldly. If anyone needs help, it's you. The distance between us grew wider with each passing day. Asher's hostility became more apparent, and I felt more isolated in our once loving home. One evening, desperate for a resolution, I proposed a weekend getaway to rekindle our relationship. Maybe some time away from everything will help, I suggested, hope lacing my voice. He chuckled bitterly. You think a vacation will fix this? He shook his head. There's nothing left to fix, Harper. It felt like a punch to the gut. Are you saying you don't want to try anymore? His silence was deafening. I started to gather more evidence of Asher's growing indifference and Evelyn's relentless bullying. Every recording, every email, every witness statement from friends, each piece felt like a step toward reclaiming my life. One day, after a particularly harsh argument, I confided in my friend Leah. I don't know how much longer I can do this, I admitted, tears streaming down my face. You deserve better, Harper, Leah insisted. You need to consider separating from him. I've been thinking about it, I whispered, feeling a mixture of fear and relief at the thought. Asher's behaviors grew more unpredictable. He came home late more often, his excuses flimsy. One night I confronted him. Where have you been? Out, he replied curtly. Out where, Asher? You stink of alcohol. Why do you care? He slurred, stumbling past me. We're barely even married anymore. His words cut deep, but they also strengthened my resolve. I wouldn't let him or his vile mother break me any further. I needed to protect myself. The next day I met with a lawyer. I'm considering separation, I confessed, handing over my collected evidence. The lawyer nodded sympathetically. Given what you've documented, Harper, you have a strong case for legal separation. As I walked out of the office, the weight on my shoulders felt a little lighter. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew I had to start taking steps to reclaim my life, even if it meant leaving Asher behind. We're done, Harper. Here are the divorce papers. The words cut through the air like a knife. I looked up from my coffee, unable to hide my shock. What? You're blaming me for something that's not even proven? Asher pushed the papers across the table, his expression cold. It's not just about the kids anymore. This isn't working. I stared at the papers, my world crumbling around me. Asher, we can still fix this, I pleaded, my voice breaking. He shook his head. No, Harper, it's over. I'm done. Tears welled up in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. You're making a mistake, I whispered. His eyes softened for a moment, but the coldness quickly returned. Maybe, he said, turning to leave. But it's my decision. I sat there, frozen, as he walked out the door. The sound of the car engine starting and then fading away left an eerie silence in the house. The divorce papers stared back at me, but I knew I couldn't just sit and wallow. I picked up my phone and called my lawyer. "He served me the papers," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "We'll respond accordingly," the lawyer reassured. "Remember, you have a strong case, Harper." I spent the next days gathering all the evidence I had meticulously collected: emails, audio recordings, and statements from friends who had witnessed Asher's growing hostility. They were all meticulously organized. Each piece felt like a small victory. One evening I was going through some old emails when I found a particularly incriminating one. It was from Asher's mother, Evelyn, outlining how she had planned to blame me for our childlessness. "Make sure Harper meets with the specialist," the email read. "If she's the problem, we can pressure her. If not, we need to consider other options for Asher's happiness." I forwarded the email to my lawyer immediately. "This could be crucial," I wrote. Days turned into weeks as the legal wheels began to turn. Meanwhile, I started making plans to move out. I didn't want to be in the same house where every room held memories of a happier time that now seemed so distant. I broke the news to Leah over lunch. "I'm moving out," I said, pushing a salad around my plate. "I'm proud of you, Harper." Leah said, her eyes warm with support. "You deserve to start fresh." Packing my things felt surreal. Asher was distant, rarely coming home. The few times he did, he barely acknowledged me. I kept my interaction with him minimal, focusing instead on the text messages and legal updates. Finally, the day came. A moving truck idled outside, ready to take my things to a new apartment. As I took one last look around the house, Asher walked in. He paused, taking in the scene. "So, this is it," he said, his voice flat. "Yes, it is," I replied, meeting his eyes for what felt like the last time. "Goodbye, Asher." He nodded, saying nothing more. I walked out, feeling a strange mix of sorrow and liberation. As the truck pulled away, Leah called. "You okay?" she asked. "I'm better," I said, feeling a sense of relief. "It's the start of something new." I knew the road ahead would be tough, but I was ready. With my friends by my side and the evidence strengthening my case, I felt a flicker of hope. It was time for a new beginning. "You deserve better," my friend Leah said warmly, handing me a box as we moved the last of my things into the new apartment. "Move forward, Harper. We're here with you." I smiled, grateful for her unwavering support. "You're right. It's time to start anew." The apartment felt like a fresh slate, devoid of painful memories. I started my first day in a new marketing firm with a renewed sense of purpose. The team welcomed me warmly, and I quickly immersed myself in the work, finding it a welcome distraction. One evening, Leah convinced me to join her at the local gym. "Come on, Harper. Exercise is the best therapy," she insisted, dragging me out of the house. I hesitated, but eventually succumbed to her persistence. At the gym, we walked into a class led by Ian, a personal trainer with an infectious energy. His bright smile and encouraging words made the grueling workout almost bearable. "Hey, great job today!" Ian approached me as the class ended, handing me a bottle of water. "You've got potential." "Thanks," I replied, a little out of breath, but feeling good. I needed this. "Well, you're welcome to join us anytime," he said, his eyes kind and genuine. Over the next few weeks, I found myself looking forward to gym sessions. Ian's enthusiasm and sincerity were a breath of fresh air in my otherwise chaotic life. We started talking after each class, and he soon learned about my recent separation. "I'm sorry you had to go through that," he said one evening, sitting next to me on a bench. "But it's admirable how you're handling everything." "You've got to keep moving forward," I said, echoing Leah's earlier words. "Staying stuck doesn't help anyone." Ian nodded. "True. And for what it's worth, you seem like someone who deserves all the happiness in the world." We continued to see each other at the gym and eventually outside it as well. He invited me to dinner one night, and I agreed, feeling a flutter of excitement and nervousness. At the restaurant, he made me laugh, sharing stories from his childhood and his journey towards becoming a personal trainer. I realized how easy it was to talk to him, how natural it felt. "Thank you for tonight," I said as we walked back to my apartment. "It's been a while since I've had a good time." "I'm glad," he smiled. "You deserve many more good times, Harper." As the weeks turned into months, Ian and I grew closer. He became a beacon of support, cheering me on as I rebuilt my life piece by piece. With supportive friends like Leah and the warmth that Ian brought into my life, I felt stronger than ever. One weekend, Ian invited me to meet his friends at a small gathering. As we mingled, I couldn't help but feel a sense of belonging that I hadn't felt in a long time. His friends welcomed me warmly, and Ian stayed by my side, ensuring I felt comfortable. "You're doing amazing, Harper," Leah said later that evening. "Look at how much you've grown. How happy you seem." "I feel like I'm finally moving forward," I admitted, smiling. "It's not easy, but it feels right." Leah squeezed my hand. "You've come so far, and we'll always be here for you, no matter what." As I looked around at my new apartment and thought of my new friends, I realized I was indeed starting a fresh chapter. It wasn't perfect, and it had its challenges, but it was mine. And for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful about what the future might hold. "Wow, look at you glowing. Congrats on the baby news, Harper," Gabe exclaimed as he hugged me tightly. I smiled, feeling a mix of joy and anxiety. This company reunion was the first time I was seeing many of my old colleagues since the divorce. "Thanks, Gabe," I replied, patting my growing belly. Across the room, I spotted Ian chatting with a group of my former co-workers, his easygoing nature fitting right in. Just as I was about to walk over to him, I heard an all-too-familiar voice behind me. "Harper, pregnant? This must be a joke," Asher sneered, stepping into my view. I turned slowly, meeting his eyes with a steely resolve. "It's not a joke, Asher. I'm pregnant," he scoffed. "So you moved on pretty quickly, huh? Seems fitting." "Ian and I are happy together, and we're excited about this baby," I said calmly. Ian walked over, sensing the tension. "Everything all right, Harper?" "Yes, just clearing things up with Asher," I replied. "Asher, this is Ian." Ian extended his hand. "Nice to meet you, man." Ignoring the handshake, Asher's eyes wandered to my belly again. "So still think she's the problem?" he muttered, more to himself than to anyone else. Suddenly, Asher's current girlfriend, Taylor, appeared beside him. She looked between us, confused. "What's going on?" "Asher here is finding it hard to believe I'm pregnant," I explained, feeling a surge of boldness. "He always blamed me for our childlessness." Taylor's face paled. "Is that true, Asher?" Before he could answer, Ian spoke up. "You know, maybe it's time you looked in the mirror, Asher. Sometimes the answers aren't as obvious as we think." Asher's jaw clenched, and Taylor's eyes widened with realization. "You never took a fertility test, did you?" she asked him, her voice shaking with anger. Asher looked cornered, but he didn't answer. The crowd around us grew silent, whispers spreading like wildfire. "Harper isn't the problem, Asher," I said, feeling an unexpected wave of vindication. "Your refusal to consider that possibility cost us everything." Taylor turned on her heel and stormed out, leaving Asher standing there, seething. He glared at me one last time before following her. "This isn't over," he hissed as he walked away. Ian placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "You handled that well," he said. "I'm proud of you." "Thanks," I sighed, the tension easing. It needed to be said. We finished the evening surrounded by supportive friends, sharing laughter and stories. As we walked out of the reunion, Ian held my hand. "You okay?" he asked, concern in his eyes. "Better than ever," I answered, a genuine smile tugging at my lips. Finally, it feels like I can truly move forward. Back in our apartment that night, I reflected on the evening. The showdown with Asher felt like a turning point. No longer a victim of his manipulations, I felt empowered and ready to embrace my new life with Ian and our baby. As I drifted off to sleep, Ian's arm around me, I felt a sense of peace. The future seemed bright, and for the first time in a long while, I was excited for what was to come. "This isn't fat, Asher. It's our baby," I said, my voice firm as I stared him down. Asher's face twisted in confusion. "What?" Ian stepped closer, putting an arm around me protectively. "So, still think she's the problem?" he said, looking Asher straight in the eye. Taylor, standing a few feet away, watched the exchange with wide eyes. "Is this true, Asher?" she asked, her voice trembling. Asher stammered, his usual composure collapsing under the weight of the truth. I don't know. I never thought." Taylor's eyes hardened. "You didn't think because you didn't want to know the truth. You selfishly assumed Harper was to blame." "Taylor, wait." Asher reached out, but she recoiled. "I can't believe I trusted you," she snapped. "You made me think Harper was the problem, and now you can't even face reality." The room seemed to hold its breath as Taylor turned and walked out, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. Asher stood there, looking lost and humiliated. I took a deep breath, feeling years of pent-up frustration release. "You should get tested, Asher. It's time you stopped hiding from the truth." He glared at me, but didn't respond as he stormed off after Taylor, the crowd parting to let him through. The rest of the evening was a mixture of congratulations and support from friends and colleagues. Despite the drama, I felt a sense of closure, knowing I had finally confronted the man who had caused me so much pain. Back at our apartment, Ian and I settled into bed. "You were amazing tonight," he said, kissing my temple. "I'm so proud of you." "I couldn't have done it without you," I replied, feeling grateful for his unwavering support. In the weeks that followed, I heard through the grapevine that Asher had finally taken a fertility test. The news spread quickly. Asher was the one who was infertile. The revelation crushed him, and it seemed Evelyn could no longer ignore the truth. Evelyn paid me an unexpected visit one afternoon. She stood at my doorstep, looking older and more worn than I remembered. "I need to speak with you, Harper," she said, her voice strained. I let her in, curious about what she had to say. "I'm sorry," she began, sitting on the edge of the couch. "I was wrong to blame you. Asher," she trailed off, tears filling her eyes. "This is his fault." Her apology felt hollow after years of torment, but I nodded. "Thank you for saying that, Evelyn." "I've disowned him," she continued, her voice breaking. "I can't support his deceit." Part of me felt vindicated, but another part felt pity. "I hope he finds a way to accept the truth," I said softly. Evelyn left quietly, leaving me with a mix of emotions. I knew I had to focus on my future, not the past. A few days later, Ian and I sat in the nursery, putting together a crib. "You know, he's going to have the best life," Ian mused, smiling at the thought of our baby. "And a wonderful father," I added, squeezing his hand. As we finished the crib, I looked around the room, filled with hope and love. My life had taken a turn I never expected, but I embraced it wholeheartedly. Ian pulled me close, resting his hand on my belly. "We've got this." For the first time in years, I believed it wholeheartedly. The painful chapters were closing, and new, beautiful ones lay ahead. "I have the family I always dreamed of," I said quietly, looking around our cozy living room filled with baby toys and soft light from the late afternoon sun. Ian smiled, his eyes filled with warmth as he held our baby boy Elijah in his arms. "And I'm the luckiest man to have you and our baby." The unexpected knock at the door broke the tranquil moment. I got up, curiosity piqued, and opened the door to find Asher standing there, looking disheveled. His presence was jarring, a ghost from a painful past now standing on my doorstep. "What do you want, Asher?" I asked, keeping my tone flat. "I need to talk," he muttered, shifting uncomfortably. "Please, just a few minutes." I hesitated but nodded, stepping aside to let him in. He looked around, taking in the warm, welcoming atmosphere of our home. Ian stood protectively near the baby, his expression guarded. "Make it quick, Asher," I said, crossing my arms. I need to apologize," Asher began, his voice shaky. "I know it doesn't change anything, but I'm so sorry for everything. Finding out I'm the one who's infertile, it destroyed me. Evelyn cut ties with me. Taylor left me." "I'm sorry you had to find out that way," I replied, feeling a mix of emotions. "But you treated me horribly, Asher. No apology can erase that." He nodded, tears welling in his eyes. "I know. I was a coward, and now I've lost everything. I just wanted to say sorry." "Thank you," I said, my voice softening slightly. "But this doesn't change the past." He nodded one last time, glancing at Ian, who held Elijah closer. "Take care of them," he said before turning and walking out the door. Asher's visit left me feeling unsettled, but also freed from the lingering shadows of our past. Ian came over, wrapping an arm around me. "You okay?" "Yeah, I'm okay," I replied, leaning into him. "It's just a lot to process." The air in the room felt lighter after Asher's departure, and I could breathe a little easier. Elijah cooed in Ian's arms, and I smiled, feeling a sense of peace. Months passed, and life settled into a happy routine. Ian and I reveled in the joy of raising Elijah, our laughter filling the home. One sunny afternoon, we took Elijah to a nearby park, enjoying the simple pleasures of family life. As we sat on a bench, watching Elijah gurgle and reach for a butterfly, Ian turned to me. "We've come a long way, haven't we?" I nodded, tears of happiness in my eyes. "Yes, we have, and I wouldn't change a thing." "I'm so proud of you." Ian said, squeezing my hand. You've shown so much strength and grace. Thank you, I whispered. I couldn't have done it without you. We watched Elijah play, content in the life we had built together. The memories of hurt and betrayal were still there, but they no longer held power over me. The future was bright, filled with endless possibilities and the love of my new family. As the sun began to set, I felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over me. The trials and tribulations of the past had forged a path to the happiness and contentment I now enjoyed. Ian, I said softly, turning to face him. Thank you for being my rock, my partner, my everything. He smiled, leaning in to kiss me gently. Always, Harper. Always. And as we walked hand in hand, with Elijah giggling between us, I knew that whatever the future held, we would face it together, stronger and more united than ever.